Hi, FPCA church family. These are unusual times. I hope you got the message yesterday that all of our activities on the church campus at First Presbyterian are canceled for the next 2 weeks. We will still have worship, but it will be live streamed and all of us will be able to log in and participate together digitally. You can learn more about that at fpcasheville.org. I hope you'll join us. There will be music, something for children, Bible study, prayers. It will be a worship service, and we will worship together in spirit and in truth. Now, if you have a few minutes, I want to share some pastoral thoughts with you. One of my colleagues said the other day, "I've never been a pastor in a pandemic before." He said, "I hope grace abounds." I think that's true for all of us. We need grace to abound because we've never been through this before. We've never been parents or spouses or children or employers or employees or neighbors in a pandemic before. We need grace to abound. The church has been through something like this before, and the church has always been guided by a couple of things. One, trust in God, and two, care for the vulnerable. One of the best ways we can trust in God is to pray. So I encourage you to pray. Have a conversation with God about what's going on and about what you're feeling. Pray for those who are caring for the sick of our community, for doctors and nurses who need strength and sleep. Pray for our local officials who are trying to make decisions without the information they wish they had. Pray for those who are sick, for their families and their friends. Pray for those who are afraid, and pray for those who are vulnerable. All of us feel vulnerable now, and many of us don't usually feel vulnerable. It can be unsettling when you're used to thinking that you're untouchable, and suddenly you realize that you're vulnerable. God has always known how vulnerable we are. That's why God sent His Son to live with us in our vulnerability. God cares for us as a parent cares for a child. Scripture teaches us that we can pray to God as children of a loving parent. We can trust that God already knows our needs, that God will hear us and is eager to listen, and that God will respond with love. So I encourage you to pray. The other thing that we can do is care for the vulnerable. That's part of why we've canceled all face-to-face activities for a couple of weeks. Our public health experts tell us that one of the best ways to help is by reducing social contact. That slows the spread of disease and gives our medical community precious needed time. Another thing we can do is to pay attention to our own health and hygiene. We can wash our hands more regularly and for longer. 20 seconds is longer than you realize. You might consider saying the Lord's Prayer while you wash your hands. Also, cough into your elbow, use a tissue, take your temperature. If you have 6 symptoms or someone in your family or household has 6 symptoms, stay home. That's one of the important ways that we can care for the vulnerable. If you're in a high-risk population, and honestly, more of us are in a high-risk population than want to admit it, if you're in a high-risk population, I encourage you to stay at home much more than you usually would. And if you have to go out, keep more of a distance. I encourage us as a church to think creatively about how we can care for the vulnerable. Send a few more text messages than you might normally do. Make some time for phone calls. Check in on near neighbors. If you have a family member or friend who shouldn't be going out, what if you offered to go to the grocery store for them, to leave some supplies on the front porch? If school's closed, we might have the opportunity to help one another with childcare or with tutoring. If parents need to work from home while schools are closed, well, that's hard to do. As a church, we're beginning to talk with our mission partners about how we can continue caring for our neighbors who are experiencing homelessness in this time. We've had to cancel Saturday Sanctuary out of concern for the vulnerable, but we still want to care in whatever way we can. This is a time to increase some social distance, but it's not a time to turn inward. This is a time for us to respond to a call, to think creatively about how we can share the love of Christ with our neighbors. Jesus says when you care for the most vulnerable, you care for Him. When we care for Christ, Christ cares for us, and we feel Christ's love and peace in our lives. I hope you'll join us for worship on Sunday at 11 a.m. by live streaming. You may have never done that before. There are some instructions on our website. If you have any technical problems or need help, feel free to email one of our staff, and we would love to help you. I'll be praying for you and our community, and I ask you to do the same.